Hey, everybody. Welcome to another wonderful episode of Feedback and Friends. This is going to be a very special night, and you will see why in a couple of seconds. But let me just shout out real quick while everybody is still getting going and tuning in. We have an ILBC real life show coming up in Bristol on July 6th at Lost Horizon. We have almost closed submissions for contestants. And what is a contestant? If you ever watch the DMC championships, it's kind of like that, but with live electronic music. We are actually trying to push creativity and performance, and we will have contestants competing in front of a panel of judges and a live audience to figure out who will be the ILBC champion. So if you are not in Bristol or close to it and you cannot make it on July 6th, do not fret, because we will be live streaming it, and you as the audience will be able to help vote for the champion. As well, there may be some surprises on how you are able to influence the visual aspect of the stream. You all know that I love working with Volta, which I just realized I forgot to start, so I'll take care of that shortly. But yeah, there's so much exciting stuff. July 6th, Lost Horizon. There's also going to be showcases from Matt Black, the co-founder, half of Cold Cut and founder of Ninja Tune, as well as a Jam Pro workshop. We're also having Free Art from Slamboree, Gramsci. I'm going to be doing a showcase, and then we have 4 people from EMOM, including Nada in Furs, Fourth Engine, Linus Fitness Center. Oh my God, I can never remember all 4. And Didactic MK. Yes, I got it. So my head has been super full planning this show, and I hope to see you all there. But let me show you the surprise I have. Get this. Look who's in my house today.
Hello, everybody. Hello.
So Natty is right next to me, so like there's going to be this funny slapback delay. So I'm going to have to take turns muting and unmuting. But Natty is visiting me for the first time ever after 5 years running this Discord together, because Natty is an OG EDMP Discord member. After a few years, Natty is here in person. He's been visiting me. We have done lots of Spanish things. He's had all the ham, all the cheese, all the agua de Valencia. In general, I'm really stoked. So you're going to have to live with the slapback because we're sitting right next to each other. Tough stuff. How are you doing, Natty? How's your vacation?
It's been amazing. I mean, I stopped by Amsterdam first, and now I'm here, and I've been melting in the heat, but it's been such nice getting around the historic and the modern urban stuff, and the Albufera today was wonderful.
Excellent. All right. This is going to be a challenge. Like I'm sure I will mute myself at least once. That is ILBC bingo, of course. We have a newcomer, and we have Schwarzaz. That's my Jewish tendencies, but it's probably Schwartz AZ. That would be probably how American people would say it, but I just channeled my Jewish grandmother. Oy vey, we have Schwarzaz in the house. And, and this is the first time that Schwartz AZ is with us. I'm totally kidding. And they have contributed a track called Don't Wanna Stop. And, oh, Natty, do you have the queue open? Is there any comments? I forgot to engineer that. Well, you're here, Schwartz AZ. Do you have any comments about this track or anything you would like us to know? We're still getting our SHIT together because this is the first time I've ever had anyone in person. But okay, you know what? There is a write-up here. Track that I wrote and produced featuring vocal stems from artist Kara that I obtained on Splice. First song I've put together in a few years, and it was great to get back into it. All due credit to Kara for the amazing samples. Okay. Sweet. So let's check out your track, and we're going to get going. And for those of you who might also be joining us for the first time, we go in order of submission unless you throw us a little donation. And by the way, if you can donate, that will help greatly. I'm throwing the show in Bristol out of my own pocket and trying to sell tickets, and also trying to make a really cool show, not for profit, just to showcase and be able to do events with amazing artists. But anyways, I will stop talking and we will start listening. This is Schwartz AZ called I Don't Want to Stop. Wow. So really, really strong, nice first submission. I mean, super glad to have you in our little crew. We have a pretty fun time on Wednesday nights here. And first of all, I just kind of want to echo what everyone else in the chat is saying. This has a really, really nice, positive groove. Like, it makes me feel good. It's something I would really enjoy listening to, just for like the way the elements kind of sit together. I also would like to echo the chat when I do agree that the vocal ducking is a little bit distracting, and I think it's a cool experiment, but maybe one way that you could sort of have your cake and eat it too, sonically speaking, is to mix a layer of it doing that with a centered sort of drier layer, so that you don't lose focus, but you still have a little bit of a pumping effect. So usually when I want to do something experimental and drastic, I sort of like meet in the middle like that, you know, especially when it's a central element like a vocal, because if it's too crazy, you kind of distract people away from the smoothness and the groove of the track. But if it's boring, it's boring. So you obviously want to find somewhere to meet in the middle. So that's what I would suggest. What do you think, Nathanael?
I mean, there we go. Oh, so far. Anyway, sorry. I like the fact that it's inspired by someone that's important in your life, and the fact that they encouraged you to get back into music effectively, from the sounds of it. I think the next thing, if I was going to work on this, would be to tweak how the vocals are processed to make them a little bit more unique sounding. I mean, I'm thinking stuff like mainly how you stack complementary layers to it.
Natty, can you turn your mic up?
Yes. Hello. Sorry, I'm just experimenting trying to get it to work properly. Anyway, if you have a formant shifter, that's one thing you can start creating alternate layers with. There's also pitch correction, which, I mean, these vocals are obviously fine. There's nothing wrong with them, but you can use pitch correction as a creative tool. So, I mean, I think that maybe it's worth continuing your experiments. See how far you can push the vocals so they don't sound just like the sample. Good vibe.
Good vibes all around. Oh, we have some regular favorites today. I always love it. I really feel like we have our own little group going. Next up is Calaxis, who has been a guest before on one of our other shows, Prump My Live, where we messed around with his setup. So stoked to hear what you're up to, Calaxis. Under any specific feedback, they are saying this song is supposed to eventually be the opener for an upcoming space-themed album, and the mixing is quite rough. We call this standard producer disclaimer. So good job. Next up, Calaxis. Whoa, oh, whoa, that caught me by surprise. That was a very whip ending indeed. Sharp and short, sweet. Really, really cool chords. I mean, I love that kind of like progressive, experimental, like something other than the old like triads and minor sevenths. And like, I have to confess that even though I played piano for a really long time in my life, I definitely have fall back on the like jazz pentatonic thing. And I really enjoy when people push the boundaries and go with like higher, what I call fancy theory stuff. And yes, it's really sad that I took classical piano for like 12 years and music theory in college, and I can barely read music and have no idea what to call anything. Goes to show you what willful mental blocking can do. But anyways, I really appreciated that part of it, and I really loved it. Definitely, of course, as you said, the mixing is a little bit, I wouldn't even call it rough, because the thing is like for me, when I'm in rough mix stage, it's sort of like listen at your own risk. Like there's always something sticking out and resonant, and that was very nice on my ears. Like nothing hurt me. So I think for me, it's just a question of bringing clarity into it, and this is something that you'll probably do anyways as you mix, but bringing some air into it, because it's a little bit dull and a little bit rounded. And it, of course, a plugin that we like to talk about all the time is the Slate Digital Fresh Air, which is a great free plugin for this kind of thing. I would just put a little more air into it overall, and then emphasize that sharp, sparkly part, because right now it's a little bit too soft, and everything in general I think could punch a little bit more, and that will come with bus compression and parallel compression. So I would recommend that, and some crispiness. And shouts out to Rags, who's always putting amazing comments in the chat. Thank you. I laugh every single day. So I think, once you get that a little more in focus, Natty, do you have tips for crispy mixing?
I mean, for me, it's obviously you get the bass levels right first, because that tends to hold everything together. But then I start usually by focusing on the percussion, because that's what drives a lot of crispy energy in a song. And then it's about trying to sort of stack your lead vocal or your melody and sort of mush it into that space just ever so slightly, give it some air, maybe use an exciter. But I mean, also don't overdo it, because if you do it too much, it'll make a song tiring. So you use it into your arrangement too, so that you can break everything up and give it that bursts of energy, and then back down again, and so you're getting a crispiness, and then you're getting sort of the mellow, because I think this track is a little bit of both.
Totes.
It's a really cool track so far.
Natty, you're so much more succinct than usual. Is it because you're distracted by the slapback echo of your own voice?
That is a little bit weird, yeah.
Feedback and Friends, very close quarters edition. Oh, by the way, I should mention that we just randomly decided to have a pajama party. Natty in this lovely NASA shirt, me wearing, it doesn't look as much like pajamas, but considering you can now see my back and my sides, you can see that my outfit totally doesn't go together, which is, I'm just going to call it pajamas, all right? And not like I did it with my eyes closed or anything. So we're going to move on to our next guest. Oh, wait, Q Jumper. We have a Q Jumper.
3 months in advance donation for the Twitch subscription thing from Grades. He's entry number 9 in the form right now.
Oh yeah, I forgot that I finished onboarding us to Twitch affiliate. So yeah, you can subscribe and stuff. It's crazy. All right, Grades. I'm really stoked to hear this. Grades is also a regular, and they would like to know, what is this song missing? So great puzzle. We will try to detect that for you.
I can't follow. It's not the same. I can't let you to welcome. It's not the same. For me. It's not the same. I can't let you to welcome. It's not the same.
Oh my gosh, I love this grades on and like I love the feeling of it in the sub pack. The drums and the low end are sitting really, really nice and they're punching and they're doing like everything right. I think my first thought is that you are suffering from what I am going to just make up a word for now. I'm going to call it being your own vocalistitis, which is the thing, right? Like when you are the one doing the vocal, you tend to bury it because it's your voice. You know every word, so you think that it's clear. It's an illusion, okay? And then you also just like push it down because everyone is like this except complete narcissists, and I'm not going to include you in that because you're really nice. So I'm going to assume that you're suffering from being your own vocalistitis, which is a dangerous thing. Most of the time, my only solution for that is to just get second opinions like this one to help you balance out that illusion because it's too easy to bury your own vocal. And that's kind of what you're doing. Like it's beautiful. It sounds super great. And I want to hear it more. And I think that because the rest of the mix is so wonderfully like dynamic and punchy and sitting there, it could really use the vocal be floating more on top. And so not just floating more on top, but because it's really reverby, this is a trick I often suggest. Mix in a little bit of a dry close-up signal. It's a very modern sound. I mean, it's kind of like the backbone of why Billie Eilish is so big. I mean, obviously she's talented, her brother's a great songwriter, blah, 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 blah. But that close-up, intimate voice in your ear is really pleasing. In fact, maybe I should make this whole stream ASMR. I would probably get more people watching if I were... Natty's licking the mic. But you should maybe like, you have to get over that and just realize that like your voice is great, first of all. So do not worry about it. And second of all, mix a little bit of that dry signal in so that you have some syllables and bump the whole thing up a little bit. Really beautiful stuff. And with the reverb, just be careful. And this goes out as a blanket thing, not necessarily even to you. Be careful, everyone, to EQ your reverb because you want reverb. You don't want to blur your mix and you don't want to create resonances that don't need to be there. So I pretty much EQ my reverb every single time. Like there's usually no reason not to EQ it a little. Just like any other EQing, don't use harsh slopes, right? Because those can actually create more problems and resonances, but EQ at least a little bit of the low end out. But, as far as what it's missing, I think that is the big thing, what it's missing. But others have said they felt like it could go somewhere, that it's a nice place that it sits in, but it sits in the place. So, I mean, I think you can be more creative, like, make little chops with your vocals, have some sections maybe where you take out some of that beautiful pad-like texture and you just have minimal things where you focus on the drums and the bass. And, think of it as shooting a movie, right? You have different scenes, you focus in on different people's faces or different things, and then the story is told because you show people where to focus. So I think if you play a game of, okay, we have this beautiful focus, where am I going to go from here? Here's a next shot. We're focusing on something else. So I think I would love to hear what you do with this because it's a great, great song. But I think the dynamic will come from you taking turns with elements and not being afraid to bring your own vocal to the front. And I've been talking along. Today it's me that's monologuing. I don't know. Maybe Natty's proximity just makes me not shut up. Natty.
I mean, you basically said everything I was going to say. Well, I mean, you covered all the important bits, I think. I mean, as far as establishing a direction, well, you could go one of two ways. I mean, I think that the minimal approach could work, where you go more mellow and down tempo. Otherwise, what you're looking for is a switch up of some kind,
We're totally switching places. Natty is succinct.
I'm trying. That slapback is so distracting. It's just like...
I know. I mean, maybe we should just try and like. Oh gosh, this is the problem. No, Natty only has a USB mic. Otherwise, I would just plug him into my mixer. So we could also just pass around the mic. I mean, we're like physically like 2 feet from each other.
I guess.
So. Yeah, I think this might be less annoying and less like trippy and stuff for you. Yeah, pass the mic. Yo, yo, yo. Oh my God, I'm turning into my parents. Stop. So thank you, Grades. We really love it, and we hope that you bring it back to us when you've done some more therapy for your being your own vocalitis.
We've got another cue jumper as well.
I'm a loner. I'm not used to having people in my space. I'm just,
Is your phone okay?
yes.
Oh no.
Okay, well, while we play the next song, we're gonna work out some of these pass the touchy on the left hand side. Speaking of people who have being your own vocalitis, next up we have another regular and just weirdly insecure for no reason because he's really really good. Our friend, Yes Please. And so what is your thing this week? This is crazy. Sorry, we are disorganized, but I'm trying to at least entertain people in my madness. It's just so distracting having Nathaniel next to me. I have you muted. So because of the slapback, so no one's gonna hear you unless I unmute you because I have power. All right, I'm gonna quit clowning around because Yes Please is really really good, and I'm looking forward to hearing this. Do, do, do.
I can hear your heartbeat rising when we're vibing. It's kid drums filling the room. I'll never let the snare fall silent. No awkward timing. It's different when I'm with you. Girl, I need your sound. Rushing over, let it carry me so high. Flying around like there's no gravity, and on a trip to meet my destiny and catch a ride with you. I can feel your waves crashing into me softly, baby, so softly, yeah. Your waves come and carry me higher, baby, way higher, babe. Turn it up a little bit more, I want your love. Put your waves inside of my soul, I want your touch. Turn it up a little bit more, I need that loud. Come on, drown it out, come on, drown it out. Roll on into my beach and crash your waves. Grab a drink and a chair, let's puff some haze. I've been here chilling out on summer days. Let's get blazing, take a trip back to my place. I can tell you're vibing, so girl, let's live in this groove. And when the bass comes crashing, you know it's a type of move, a move. Girl, I need your sound. Rushing over, let it carry me so high. Flying around like there's no gravity, and on a trip to meet my destiny and catch a ride with you. I can feel your waves crashing into me softly, baby, so softly, yeah. Your waves come and carry me higher, baby, way higher, babe. Turn it up a little bit more, I want your love. Put your waves inside of my soul, I want your touch. Turn it up a little bit more, I need that loud. Come on, drown it out, come on, drown it out. Feel your waves crashing into me softly, baby, so softly, yeah. Your waves.
Oh man, have you ever had to look at your own back on screen? It's really distracting. I can like see my foot and everything. So yeah, sorry about that, but this just vocals are awesome as always. I really love the smoothness of your production. If I were to nitpick, I would say like it's almost like too smooth. Not the vocals, but the whole track is sort of like I wanted to punch in and out a little bit more on the drums and the low end thing, just a little bit, because right now I feel like maybe it's compressed, over compressed. Whatever it's doing, it's sort of just sitting in the same dynamic, whereas I want it to kind of like slap me with the snare, you know? Chris, you did not come for the feet picks. I'm just going to pretend you didn't say that. Dum, 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 na, na, na. But yeah, I mean, I love the track. I love the parts. I love the music you make. I may be biased, but whatever. I just really think that, yeah, some more slapping, some more like breathing, because dynamic range is really important. Even though everything is loud and everything is compressed, and like, it's easy to sort of get caught up in the loudness wars. The best thing that I actually got from Mr. Bill, and I've gotten a lot of great advice from Mr. Bill. Shouts out to Mr. Bill. He's a really good friend for a long time. But one of the things he showed me one day when I came over with a mix down was that even though mine was like hitting louder on the left scale than his, it sounded quieter once you turned it down to like Spotify levels, because of the lack of dynamic range, because it was so over compressed that you kind of just, it was like a little quiet voice in the background, whereas his was sort of breathing in and out at you because he was allowing the dynamic range to happen. So how can you improve dynamic range? I mean, one of my favorite things is just another feedback and friends bingo is dynamic EQ. Like sometimes if you have a frequency that needs to be controlled, let's say in any kind of melodic element, if you put dynamic EQ on it, you are curtailing the excessive frequency by scooping it out rather than squishing everything back down so that you can push it up. So I almost always recommend dynamic EQ for all kinds of melodic elements, especially if you want to have a more delicate hand. For the drums, I would experiment a little bit with parallel compression. Again, you can slam it, distort it, go crazy with it, and then you can dial that signal back and mix it in with the dry so that you still have a little bit of compression. Natty, what did you think of that?
It's a fantastic vibe. So I agree. I mean, I think it was a little bit overblown, and I do think that limiting is a big problem there. I mean, another thing that you can do to make it easier to deal with is effectively just simplify how you're doing it in the arrangement. You can create more dips organically through just how you're songwriting. And right now it's like you're giving us this cool vibe, but you're never really trying to take us any different places with it. So it's just sort of one continuous mood. And with all the interesting drum patterns and the bass variation that you do have, I mean, I think there's plenty of room to sort of just maybe provide a more defined breakdown section, because that can really help with the dynamics. And once you sort of do stuff like that, then you're like, okay, maybe I don't need to drive it so hard constantly, because the track can breathe in and out. But I mean, it's a great song so far, and I mean, it wouldn't take too much to finish it, I don't think. Oh, and also, before we move on, thank you everybody for donating via the Twitch subscription thing. That's very new and we really appreciate it. I mean, I will be keeping the queue in check with that as well. Thank you.
I've decided that I'm going to become a hobbyist mime for the evening. So if Nathaniel is talking and I have something to say, I'm in a box. We're overcompressed in a box, trying to get out. Thanks for subscribing. Hope you don't regret it. Next up, we have Quansil, who is another regular user. This is like you're all fam. I'm so stoked. So Quansil says, I tried to really bring in that nostalgic melodic feeling. I'd like to know if I did it well and how I could make that feeling stronger. All right, nostalgia. Let's check that out. Oh, some great comments in the chat tonight. I love what you all have to say. There's so many great producers in here. I am honestly really honored to facilitate this. So, nostalgic. That's an interesting thing. It's a tricky balance. And you know, I come from definitely a drum and bass background. And I have to admit, I DJ'd it for 12 years. I was never really great at making it. And I think there's like something about the dirty clean sort of dichotomy. It's like if you want to evoke nostalgia, you also sometimes have to evoke the production limitations of the time. So I almost feel like the drums, like they're great pattern wise, but they almost sound a little bit clean and modern to be nostalgic, which is okay. Like I'm not saying change them, because I personally like clean modern production, but maybe you could, Nathaniel, what are you doing? Maybe you could compromise and like mix in, like have some kind of like dirty, noisy, like RC20 it a little bit more, get it a little bit more distorted just to give that feel. As people said, the chops and the pads or arps, like the melodic elements, are a little bit getting in each other's way. And another bingo point is what I like to talk about is mid-side EQ. I really think that mid-side EQ is underused. Some people don't even really know what it is, but it works inside the Ableton EQ. If you use Ableton, you just have to switch the mode from where it says stereo to mid-side. And it works in FabFilter Pro Q, and there's a lot of other EQs I'm sure that do it. But essentially, if you put the vocal chops in the middle, like you can even like bump up the mid channel a little bit, and then take those arps and carve out that same space in the mid channel. So you're kind of creating stereo field puzzle pieces, right? You're making space for one thing so that you have room for another. And a cool thing about cutting the mid channel on something like pads is you can bump the side channels, and that actually increases the stereo feeling, because I think that one thing I would like to hear more in this track is a little bit of playing with stereo feel. Like a lot of stuff kind of seems like it's just everywhere. And so I would like to hear stuff going in more different places. Nathani?
Hello again, everybody. So thank you for all your donations. That's really cool. I think that everyone in the chat is kind of right. Your ARPs and your vocal chops are competing, but I mean, they don't have to here. I mean, it might be worth looking into how you can sort of link them together through vocoding, where you transplant some of the tonal qualities of the ARPs to the vocal chops, or vice versa. I mean, because it's not really the rhythm that's the problem. It's just the fact that they're effectively two competing melodies. So you need to find a way to sort of unify that, either through making it more harmonic, or perhaps using something rather than leaving them stacked as they are, gate them together so one only happens when the other happens, and it sort of like creates a chord note rather than this sort of staggered and bouncy aroundy randomness that it currently has. The two sounds are actually really good, and wait, like you're worse than Rags for making me break tonight. That's what this is gonna be, isn't it? I also kind of really wanted a strong drum section, because I feel like this track was actually building up to a really aggressive drum and like with not really so much the bass as the focus, but just really hard, processed, snappy, fast, and crazy drum patterns. God, we're definitely worse in the same room. Love you all. So I mean, it just adds that ear candy.
Oh wait.
Yeah, we get the ear candy.
No, where did my ear candy button go?
Oh no, it's gone.
I lost it.
We lost the ear candy.
Oh god.
We're all doomed.
I'm gonna have to get it back. It's unacceptable. Wait.
Hi Cheeses here says maybe a verse using the ARPs and a verse with the glitchy strip back bit feature the Vokes. Valet.
All right. I'm sorry. I don't know where the ear candy thing is gone. But as thank you for all the subs as well. I haven't really said it enough yet, and I'm going to be making emojis for sure. And we will have an ear candy emoji. I have to figure out where that my lovely animation is gone. Vale, congratulations! You've been here and you finally get it. Okay, so we have next up in the queue. Oh my gosh, yeah, Nathaniel. I think we I don't know if we're better or worse in the same room, but I'm entertained. Oh, we have Rags up next. Yay, Rags. Just throwing out something different. I'll take whatever feedback that I can get. Okay, well, we love you. And why my SoundCloud has stopped playing automatically. All right, Rags, that was definitely different, and you kind of like tricked me out with the beginning versus the ending. Definitely that not what I expected at all either. I really like it when you experiment. I'm gonna let Natty talk because I cannot find ear candy, and I'm very sad about it.
Well, it's always nice to hear a new Rags track, and you're right, this is a different aesthetic, and it's a very swaggery and almost, in places, like hardcore hardstyle aesthetic. Like, you know, it's proper upbeat headbangy type stuff, which is cool. I mean, for the most part, I think everything is really well placed and it really atmospheric. It's just the breakdown. I feel like there's one really nitpicky thing for me, and it's that sort of how to describe it. It's like it's sort of your lead, and it goes. And I feel like in that breakdown, it would have been better to actually filter it down and make us feel almost like we're in another room, because your bass design there kind of implies that as well, like we're not really in the same space anymore as the rest of the track, and you just want to go up everything go. kind of thing. Something like, just, and obviously that's just a basic filter thing. I know it's really, really picky. It's like, it doesn't really speak to the quality of the mix, but I feel like it would match the intention of that breakdown more, is my thinking. Yeah.
Wow, Natty is on fire tonight. Like seriously on fire. I love it. I think my only comment about this is I just think the mix has a little bit of a way to go. Like the concept is there, but the mix needs to slap really hard, and it's like still very subdued. I feel like sometimes for such a person who is so unrestrained in conversation, you're a little bit restrained in production. Like you could take a little bit more risks on the mixing side, because you're taking all the risks on the concept side and the arrangement side. Like you're doing it. Now you just need to take some more risks with the mixing and really like, it's funny because like some people here over compress, over distort, over, like with you, I'm like, okay, just like let it go a little bit more, because I want to hear this like slap and punch out at me, and that's how I want to hear it. So I think that like keep going, do weird things. Do you have something to say, Nathaniel?
No, but it's just it's still the.
I think he's had a little too much paella. I'm not really sure, but yes, group project from 5 years ago. Okay. Well, you definitely have a better mixing sensibility, I think. Because I was going to say, like, the last thing I was going to say was compared to some of your other stuff, I think it could be a little bit sharpened. So definitely good concept, but, like, sharpen up the mix to be to your current standards, and even reference yourself, like we always talk about reference tracks, but we don't always talk about the fact that, like, hey, like, when you make a good mix, right? When you like the sound of it, use that as one of your references. You don't have to be making an album to reference yourself. You can kind of like develop your own style of mixing and reference that. So do not ignore the power of the reference mix, because it is very strong. I guess I'm laughing. Why did Nathaniel do this to me? This is kind of how it's been all week. Was it yesterday? We were walking around the market and we were just like humming Careless Whisper out of the corner of our mouths at random intervals. So we would just be like, ordering a drink like mature adults, and the guy would sort of be walking by us, and Natty or me would be like, yeah. Anyways, I'm not really sure what's going on, but we are going to move on to Cross Couloir. Interested in your thoughts in the sound design of the kick. That is very specific. Thank you very much. We will take a listen. This is Flamme Rouge. Are you French, or do you just like French words? Because nobody likes hearing me say French words. So I hope that you enjoy it. I don't know what just happened. My loopback has just exploded. What is happening?
Are you guys still able to hear it?
Yeah, no, I mean, our mic is still coming through, but my loopback literally just got weird. How weird is that? Uh-oh, I'm going to try reloading. And
It went so hard.
it went so hard.
It destroyed your audio.
Safari literally just... You know what? I'm going to use Brave, actually, because I don't even need to use the browser. Let's try opening it in a different browser. Sorry about that, but honestly, might as well just give feedback now. I don't really know what just happened, but it literally just shut itself off. I think that was dope. Like, honestly, I'm really like, I've heard a lot of your stuff by now, and the mixing sounded pretty tight to me. It was clean, it was driving, and the kick sounded really, really good. So, Natty, why don't you give your opinion, and I'm going to futz around and see if I can get this working in a different browser.
It definitely had plenty of ear candy. And, this is definitely the most evolved sort of... I can never remember what sort of techno this is meant to be, but, it definitely has that sort of cyberpunky, everyone's getting crazy in a club vibe. I mean, people have been comparing it to the Blade soundtrack, and yeah, it's definitely got that sort of edgy character to it, and I always love... Ooh, we're back. Ooh, we can talk over the top of it, I suppose. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, 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 boom. Sorry. I really like the sort of squelchy arps and the fact that you are adding filtering and alternating panning on everything, as you can hear here behind us. The kick itself is a very nice body. The tail is ducking out of the way of everything else, just the right length of time. And it is obviously covering the core of your bass frequencies, but it's such a pleasant and in a big club, I can imagine this really hitting you in the chest. How's it in your sub pack?
Where did it go? It appears my sub pack has lost its cable, so keep talking and I'll tell you.
Oops. Yeah, this is a problem. I didn't bring long enough cables, so Isha's using my short one. But I feel like with the sub pack, this is just going to be like really intense, because that kick is in just the right spot, so don't worry about that. And obviously we're just coming to the end, so I'm very curious to see how this resolves. We're getting a 5 out of 5, I think, for a sub pack response.
It's techno, Natty. It's going to resolve the same way it's been going the entire time.
Yes, but I feel like you could have done something like just really simple, like, I don't know, a crash or something, just a whoosh. Because right now you sort of just... You could have gone a... Why? Because I don't know, it's just how I feel. It wouldn't really change the intention here. And it's still techno resolution, but I don't know, it just been that last sort of push and it would make it really cool for other tracks to be mixed into it too, because it'd be like, and then the kick goes from a boom, 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 boom to maybe some other techno track where they got like a boom, 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 and they might even loop it, so it's like boom, 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 or something. I don't know. That's the thing with techno mixes. They don't always be creative with it, but if you can think of cool little closure elements that allow you to stack it in an interesting way, then you effectively decide how they mix it in.
True that, and I think somebody better clip that and just make a natty techno track. I think you've pretty much demonstrated all the sound sources here. So, but good job, honestly. Like seriously, like I said, I've heard a lot of your stuff now, and I think that was one of the clearest, punchiest, most effective mixes that I've seen you do. So well done, my friend. Thank you for sending that to us. Next up, we got Dan Mack. Shouts out to Dan. You've been super supportive. We see you. We love you. And shouts out to everyone who has subscribed. I will make it as worth it as possible, although I can't promise that Nathaniel will be beatboxing in my living room every week. Okay, Dan Mack, track called Departure, unreleased song, What's Missing? Also, should I add an extra verse or chorus?
So, SoundCloud being SoundCloud. Anyway, so, Daniel McPhee, it was lovely to have your entry here, and I think that your use of timbre and texture and delays is very nice. But when you say, should I add an extra verse or chorus, I actually find it hard to pick out where the verses and the choruses in this track are. And that isn't a bad thing when we just heard a full-on techno track, and they don't really have verses or choruses. It's kind of just constant faffing about with noises. And, that can be a really hypnotic vibe. This one, unfortunately, right now, if you really want to have verse and chorus, doesn't achieve that. But if you do think, okay, well, yeah, I don't need them, then what you need to do is find ways to sort of ramp up the intensity of what you've got here. I mean, that piano melody, the thing, if you want to play with something like this, maybe play about with how it's echoing and delayed around your space. You can have it so it constantly loops back on itself, increasing the feedback and getting either just sort of generally louder, or you can saturate in that manner so it's sort of stacking and getting really, really big wall of sound type stuff, or you can gradually introduce different notes. So you can turn it from what was described as sort of jazzy, but in a horror movie way, into a more deliberate experimental jazz expression, because you can effectively, by adding those little notes and increasing the length of your delays, create entirely new chord variations through what is effectively the machine itself, the pattern. You create subharmonics that then sound like different stuff, and everyone will kind of perceive them all a little bit differently. So you're actually creating a unique experience for each individual listener, because they're all going to perceive those subharmonics very differently. And I mean, it's just little things like that where you just sort of, maybe if you really want it to be this sort of loose and slightly ambient and using your kick as sort of the center to have everything else keep going through it, it's getting more experimental with everything else. And I think you might actually produce a more solid atmosphere with those sounds that you've already got.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think for me, like, some things that would really help the focus is to do some more sort of decisive mixing. Like right now, I did say to you right off the bat it was too quiet, and then it got louder. So I mean, obviously this is like unmastered, I hope. But the fact is that a lot of things need to be either like brought forward or back in the mix. Like I feel like the general levels are a little bit off, and you have really, really great, like, interesting, unique elements, but it's just hard to focus because sometimes there'll be like an arp where I'm like, okay, that's way too far in the back and I'm kind of struggling to hear it. And then maybe the kick is a little bit too much. I think that almost, I'm not sure if I would change the kick entirely, but I would at least tighten the envelope on it. I think that it's a little bit too loose and big for all the like precise melodic sort of interesting elements in this track, because it's taking up a lot of space, and especially in the sub pack, I think you could at least EQ some of the low end off and then just tighten the release, because I sort of hear a little bit more punchy drums with this. So you could also just try changing out the kick. I cannot tell you how many times I've been like frustrated with a mix for months and come back to it and just been like, I'm going to try a different kick. What is wrong, Nathaniel? Oh, he's miming now. I get it. So I would just experiment with that. This is like one of those instances where I'm always like, I'm a MIDI kick person. I know like people usually go and like, I use all audio drums, or I use like, drum samplers and it's in MIDI. And for me, like I always use MIDI because I play my drums in. And so obviously you can't do that with arranging audio samples. So it's easier. If you did use all audio, just take a bar and just replace the kick and just see how it sounds. Monmouth Music is saying that they use Simpler, so you can just import the kick sampler. That works too. I use drum racks. Sometimes I do use audio drums, but usually when that happens, it's because I've like ported something from an old Logic project in the form of stems, and then I'm just kind of too lazy to re-MIDI them. So I would say that like there's no better way. Random tip, not related to you, but just something to say for people that use Ableton. There was a really funny argument once that some people got into for a while, saying that, yeah, like the audio drums, like there's just something so weak when you put it into audio. And it's because by default, Ableton puts tiny little crossfades on stuff. So if you are an Ableton user and you're doing an audio kick and you're wondering why it might sound weaker than a MIDI kick, it's probably because you need to undo the little automatic fade on it so that it doesn't like disappear the attack. But I was just thinking of that. I thought I would mention it because it's definitely something that, like, even when I was first using Ableton, I wasn't always thinking about. And I still wouldn't turn that feature off because it's really great for just, dragging in samples and not having them clip. But if you are using audio drums, be aware that, and maybe this happens in other DAWs too. I've become fairly ignorant in my little Ableton bubble. I blame, being a professor of Ableton for the last few years on that. But I know that other DAWs may have this function as well. So, Rags doesn't like Ableton. I'm sorry. Rags uses Studio One. Does anyone else use that?
No, only Rags.
Only Rags. Only Rags. See, I already knew that about you. I love Ableton. Don't dog on Ableton. Everybody's DAW is totally fine, but they all have idiosyncrasies that, have to... Zine, it is 35 degrees in Spain. Basically, it's been super hot. Natty and I have been having some pretty funny hallucinations from the heat, me specifically. I've actually started having a siesta. I was never a siesta person, but it's so hot that I have no choice. Thank you, Dan, by the way. I really actually like enjoyed the originality of this track. I think just the mix needs a little bit of tightening. Oh, next up we have Kurta Beer. Yay. This is the most fam jam today. Kurta Beer we got to meet for the first time on the weekend, and we went to Altea and we went to Calpe, and we had lots and lots of fun trying to teach Nathaniel how to say vale, which he can now do.
Valet.
Ooh, ooh, ooh. A High Cheeses is saying, my friend who's a mastering engineer swears that Studio One sounds better than Logic. Come on. We can't have this. This is such an old fight. There's so many. I'm sure you could find like message board threads. Kurta Beer is next, and Kurta Beer is the GOAT. Thank you, Kurta Beer, for being amazing. Kurta Beer also got us to a train that we were in danger of missing with like 6 minutes to spare. So OG Formula One driver. This is a track called Obsession, and no specific feedback. He just wants us to hear his dope beats. All right, so Kurta Beer is clearing the air and saying the vocal sample is from Splice. This is not a Mala remix, although I know that Kurta Beer does like Mala, so I think naturally if you have a really strong influence or somebody that you like, it may be that sometimes you really sound like them. I really, really love this. I think like generally it was clean, it was bumping. The only criticism I have is the intro. The beginning of the intro does not do any justice to how good the song is going to be. Like I was honestly, straight up, I was listening to it for the first 8 bars or 16 or whatever the intro was, and I was kind of like, this is interesting. This is not as bumping as usual. And then it kicked in and I was like, oh, okay, it is. So I think just, maybe the intro could use a little more flair. It needs a few more pieces of flair. Maybe some ear candy. My ear candy button is still not working. I don't know. It hates me today. Let's just put it on manually. Ear candy. Just for the intro. I think that like everything else you did was sick. I really, really liked it. And I think I have no complaints. Natty, you have any other?
I mean, it's very bouncy, and obviously, yeah, using vocals and splice is a tricky thing to do because people might think it's a remix. I think if you found that was the thing that people kept saying about, maybe it would be a case of using splice samples as inspiration, and then trying to reach out to some similar vocalist and get them to make something in that aesthetic for you, custom. Then you can sort of avoid those sort of accusations, which, obviously, yeah, we're going to trust you on this one. And it is a really solid tune.
I have an idea. We already had them talking about collaborating. You should get Yes Please to do some original vocals over that.
That would be very, very cool.
Whoa, this is so Inception-y. Like, it's like I hold the mic and it goes over.
Here, hello.
Whoa.
Oh, I love it. Also, a big shout out to James Slack, who boosted the EDMP Discord server earlier, and he's active in the chat, and we really appreciate you. It's not a direct donation to ILBC, but it does allow us to sort of make more fun things because, Discord servers get emotes and stuff. It's all very cool. So, we love you, James. Who is next as well, actually? That's a question. I have lost track.
Wow, off your game, Natty.
I'm off my game, yeah.
You didn't even ping everyone.
Oh, no, I didn't, did I? We can do now, since we still have some time, I think.
We actually might even get through the queue.
Yeah.
That's insane. We have Hai Chi.
Hai Chi next. Do they have any specific feedback? Yes, kind of pointless track in the sense I don't know if there's any riffs or anything very musical. Bit of a random curveball track, trying to mix styles together again. Any feedback on levels would be great. The sub bass might be too much.
Wow, that was super intense and sonic. That was very ASMR. First thing I want to say, like my ears were definitely like wet and dripping, and really really cool sound design. It's interesting. Enderman is saying it could work great as library music, and I'm just kind of like, really? Because I would be distracted by how interesting it is. And Enderman says it's so textural, but it never gets too dynamic or in your face. I mean, maybe you're right. Like maybe it could be in the background of like an acid trip scene, but I don't know how like backgroundy I would consider it for 2AQ Dog says, ah yes, bowel movement step, my favorite genre. Yeah, accurate. I think the sub is really strong. I mean, I don't think it was too much later on in the track when the like high end elements came in. I think earlier when it first started, there was a lot of just low end, and it almost made the mix sound dull, like until those sounds came in. So I think the bass in context is good, but in the beginning when it's like the only thing, it is a little bit much. So I mean, you could automate things, you could add more sparkly things so that it sits in balance. Monmouth wants to know if you use granular synth, and you said lots of reactor granular patches. Granular synth I think are super underrated because they are hard to kind of control if you're not really experienced with them, but I definitely recommend them. And the new Ableton has some really cool Max for Live granular devices and some other weird stuff. There's also, of course, Arturius Pigments has a really cool granular engines, and Reactor. You know, I gotta say, I'm definitely like, Reactor is one of those things where I feel like I should be into, and I've never gone really deep with it. I don't know why. I think when I first started, it was really scary, and now that it's not scary, there's just so many new shiny synths and plugins distracting me. Have you ever used Reactor, Natty?
I mean, I've started playing around with it. Haven't really figured out what everything does because, I mean, React is one of these plugins that can basically do everything if you figure out how. I mean, it's almost the Reaper of synths. I have been playing around with some custom patches that friends of mine have been making. I mean, I got one that's sort of a mixture of saturation, distortion, high shelfy, panning madness. It's a really cool way of manipulating the stereo field. But I mean, I haven't the foggiest on how they actually created said patch. I know there's a potential to use modular style connective bits on Reactor, but I'm pretty sure it also takes scripting code of some sort. I mean, although I just don't know where to start with that. I'm not much of a coder, but it's an incredibly powerful synth, and if you can approach even a fraction of mastering it, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's a very good way of making your sounds unique. So I mean, also, I mean, we can timestamp anyone who has a good reason to leave effectively, so don't worry about that. Let's see, what else is people saying in the chat? For me, when as far as the structure of this one, you say it's super pointless. I mean, that does make it hard to properly finish a track if you don't really know why you're doing it. And right now, I think your overall sounds and the way they fit together are really, really cool. But yeah, it does feel a little directionless. And that's not really something I can help you with so much. I mean, once...
You can't give them direction on being directionless.
Yes, I mean, but maybe just have a break. Then I guess maybe take it out and about a bit. You could get outside and have it on and see if there are any contexts where it might fit. And then see if that's a story that you align with. Or, I don't know, put random YouTube videos, but make sure they're on mute so you're sort of getting that visual stimuli. And say, okay, what about these scenes matches my song or inspires me to take that song in a different direction, perhaps? I mean, I think that mixing mediums can be a really good way. Because even though nobody else ever sees that original inspiration that ties everything together, it's just a guide for yourself primarily. I mean, that would be sort of where I'd go. I look like a marionette talking because I am, unless you want me to do this. Hello, everybody, I'm bouncing around. Does that make you feel better or not? Because I'm definitely moving.
I really don't know what's gotten into him. I think it's like, maybe, is it the agua de Valencia? Is it the paella? Yeah. So we have Uvo next with a track called Wave Fluid. No specific feedback. Let's check it out. All right, so we love to be supportive. Everything we say is with love, right? And with love, I will say that this has a nice foundation, but I don't feel like it's really going anywhere or keeping me interested. In fact, I'm having quite an easy time talking on top of this because it's like it's almost missing some kind of evolution, right? Like, you have some nice sounds and they're fitting together nicely, but they're not really doing anything. And there's kind of this like balance that you have to have, right? If you have it either has to be interesting melodically or rhythmically or sound designly or other made up words. You have to pick a focal point, and it seems like you don't necessarily have one, because the sound design is okay. Like, I mean, everything's fitting. It's simple, but it's effective. However, it's not like interesting, right? And then the melodies are sort of like octaves, right? And fifths, and just very like monotonous in a certain way. So it does sound like a background-ish sort of thing to me. And the other thing that has already been mentioned in the chat is that the sub is a little bit out of control compared to the rest of it. So I don't not like it. I think it's got good bones, but the sub needs to be under control for sure. And I would like to hear you pick one thing to evolve, at least, whether it's like interesting sound design, interesting rhythm, interesting melody, like we need something to happen. At least we, being the royal we, which is me.
Me. I mean, yeah, I definitely agree that it could do with something slightly more tense is kind of the thing I'm thinking here. I mean, you got the doom, 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 boom, 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 boom thing going on. And that's nice, but I mean, if the minute you sort of jump more than a couple of notes at a time you can get away sometimes with using all the notes on the keyboard in your song at once, which is always nice. I mean, then you add a sort of slight sense of unease and tension to the track. And I think that this is actually one that could really benefit from that, because it's sort of a pretty almost fantastical RPG soundtrack thing going on right now. But then your bass patterns kind of make it feel like it wants to be a driving track, but then you can't really have driving if there's no tension. I mean, you think about like a action movie or something, Fast and Furious or Mission Impossible or James Bond. You can't have that momentum without something being slightly creepy or angry or scary of some sort. I feel like if you want to go that direction, you're going to have to give everything else a little bit more zing and oomph to compete with the fact that the bass itself wants to go off running into this distance, taking us on either a fun car ride or, I don't know, a train into the middle of danger. And once you decide what it is you actually want from the track, like narratively, it'll become a lot easier to write those variations into the track.
Wow, that was the most composed I've seen you this evening. It must be cooling down in here. Big shouts out. We are Feedback and Friends on ILBC TV. We are getting towards the fun part of the C in the original ILBC. We've changed it to mean the International Live Beats channel, but it started out as Challenge, and that is what we will be having July 6th in Bristol. We're going to have some real life competitors to determine the UK champion, and we are then going to have a round in New York at Shino's Tech focused on women and non-binary artists. So if you're one of those, please contact me if you would like to be a contestant in that one. And then we are going to have a totally online round for people who just cannot physically be in one of those places. And then we're going to have finals in Barcelona in a hybrid metaverse, real life, virtual, crazy thing. And we are, as always, experimenting with tech, probably going to have Volta on board doing some things where the audience can help control the video. So I'm really excited about all that, and really excited to see people waking up in the Discord now that we've pinged them. We love you. We want you to come here more often and chat with us. And next up we have Reset, another regular. What is up? We are excited to hear from you. No specific feedback, but Ryan always comes with it. So I'm looking forward to it very much. Oh, Ryan, you gave us a link that doesn't work. So we actually have to push you back for a second, play the next one. Common mistake. If you're giving us a SoundCloud link and it is private, you have to do the share thing. You can't just copy the link. I do that all the time. No worries. So just message me with an updated link and I will play it after this. But for now, we are going to move on to Imagine. Oh, it is Fam Jam night tonight in the place. It's really great. And this is a special night. For those of you who don't know anything about me or Nathaniel, we basically started the EDMP Discord about almost 6 years ago. And we hung out, talked almost every day. And this is the first time we've met in person. Nathaniel is visiting me. So it's been a pretty awesome few days.
I've definitely really enjoyed it, and I'm going to be in Bristol as well. I managed to get relatively cheap travel tickets, which is always nice and difficult in the UK. Private links on SoundCloud are annoying. In Bristol, I'm going to be helping mainly with the technical support side of it, just making sure everyone's getting on where they need to be. I'm not much of a performer at this stage in my life, so I'm definitely not going to be entering, but it's really cool that so many people have submitted for the competition. And I'm very interested in see both them and the showcasers, because I haven't actually attended many live performances overall, and an actual electronic event is something that I've never had the opportunity to attend before now. So this is going to be really, really cool for me. Also, this is also something your donations to our streams actually helps manage getting lots of really cool people out to do really cool things. And, it's approaching a year since ILBC was founded-ish, isn't it? It's, the fact that all these events are now coming up now shows that, Isha and Matt Black are very ambitious.
And yeah, I just want to respond to a comment in the chat, which I think we can all relate to, from Mr. Wilyagi. I've lost all motivation again. I don't know if I'll become what I want to be, not a seller, but an artist making my vision. But that takes time. And right now I have no focus. I'm spending half my time chilling with video games. I'm just a normal young kid. I don't get how these guys I see on YouTube live these lives with 24/7 producing. How do I make a change? So this is so universal, my friend. And to be honest, I've been producing for ages and I go in and out of this. Like, we've talked about this on previous episodes where it's called like the should have been a lawyer moment, right? Where it's just like you have this existential crisis because you're measuring yourself against things that you see. And, first of all, people love to pretend on social media that they're like perfectly dressed and clean, and they're like, yo, I'm in the studio and I've been in the studio, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of the time it's kind of BS. Like, people are showing you the proudest, most productive moments of themselves. They're not showing you all the times where they're just like sweaty, eating like old pizza crusts and making really, really crappy loops and then just being like, I hate my life. Why am I doing this? Like, it is the artist's way. I definitely recommend, if you haven't read it, a really classic book to read is Art and Fear. And also the War of Art. Those are both two really good books about just the creative process and how we just kind of all go into existential crises. And I know people in the chat are saying some really great things about this, but the simplest thing I would say to you is just keep going, but don't have these expectations measured on anyone else. Like, the most important thing, and by the way, I'm giving you this advice because I've just gone through another cycle of this myself, right? The most important thing is to find the enjoyment, right? Because if you don't enjoy it, maybe you're doing it because you feel like you have to. Oh my gosh, I have to spend my quota in the studio. But that's not why we do this. We do this to express, to feel love. As Rag says, I like what this radio guy says, social media is a lie. Stop comparing your whole life to people's highlight reels, especially when it's produced. Exactly. And I think we're all in this time where things have been super weird for the last few years. And maybe if you can't get your motivation back, you're ashamed. Don't be. I am actually going through recovery from a really, really severe burnout. I had a job for the last few years. It was the first time I had a proper job that was not just being an artist since for like 12 years. And it was really, really hard. And I was not treated particularly well at times. And I ended up just not even wanting to make music. And I felt so ashamed. I would come home being like, I'm a fraud. I'm teaching other people how to do this. And I'm trying to help them. And I just don't want to do anything except stare at the wall because I'm just exhausted and feeling burnt out. And the one thing that I actually started doing was getting away from the studio and playing video games. No diss to that, but it is sitting in front of a screen. So I recommend things that bring you outside, right? Because inspiration comes from living life. If you just sit there staring at your screen and trying to be inspired, you're going to be this like feedback loop, much like Nathaniel trying to talk into a secondary mic with latency. You will be feedbacking and feedbacking and feedbacking. And no wonder you can't feel inspired. Like, it may be hard if you live somewhere where maybe it's like you're by a highway and you have to drive, but find a spot to get to. These last few days, somebody asked if Natty and I were collabing. I think we purposely sort of just didn't even focus on that because we really just wanted to focus on experiencing life and experiencing things together. And maybe we will collab. And I think it would be better than if we sat here in a sweatbox just forcing ourselves to collab, because we've been out on the streets. We've been trying different foods. We've gone to different towns, been going to different beaches, and just don't put pressure on yourself to do anything except get out of your comfort zone. And that doesn't mean forcing yourself to use a new plugin. It means get out of the house and find something to look at, right? Do you have any words before we move on to the next one?
Drink more coffee.
I don't know if this is living vicariously. Okay, we're going to play Imagine, and then we're going to play Ryan's corrected link. All right, let's check it out. Some good vibes as always from Imagine. You know, I think I was very surprised when I saw your picture and I realized that you are, as far as I can see, kind of young, because you have this very like sophisticated, retro, like classic, like your music, and for like old people like me, I really appreciate hearing these kind of cultural references put in with modern production. I think you do that very well. Definitely, everybody said it, so I'm just going to say it again. The low end, yeah. I mean, that's the only thing that's missing for me. And it's tricky because in this style, people tend to use just kick drums as the low end, right? Which I guess you kind of are doing, but it is sort of intermittent. And I feel like maybe if you're going to use that like tight, snappy kick, have some sort of like lower thing underneath. So I would just say like, I mean, I love the pads. I love like the vibe. I just want some bass. So yeah, Salvati, I think the stream is okay. I generally have pretty good frame rate. I haven't dropped any. I know that sometimes Natty looks choppy, but that's because he's like streaming back at me in 5G. It's not because of the stream.
Actually, I figured out what the source of that is.
What?
My laptop is crying.
Oh, his laptop is crying. What is the problem? Stop crying.
Yeah, apparently I'm making all my electronics overheat today. Aren't I lucky? I mean, yeah, I've noticed all the little graphical glitches is my laptop saying, please stop. Anyway, yeah, I'm in agreement that it needs maybe something bassy. Probably something closer to a sort of, I mean, lean more into the deep house vibe, the boom, 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 boom kind of thing.
Yeah, you can turn the AC back on if you want now.
No, it's fine. I mean, I think it's coping once I tweaked a couple of settings, but I keep asking all my computers to do too much and my phone because I made that cry this afternoon as well. So, but I mean, as usual, Imagine you are very good at capturing a groove and keeping things varied and up with. Can we have an ear candy? Ear candy. Yeah, I think that overall it's a solid track, and it's just basically deciding how you want to treat that bass, and that, maybe it's not a case of everywhere has to be both. You might just choose a section where you really go hard on a bass drum, and the kick sort of becomes less of the focus. Because, I mean, yeah, for the old school aesthetic, it is quite appropriate. It's just a matter of deciding. And, I mean, it could also continue adding that ear candy by doing so. So that's, yeah, really good vibes. Thank you.
Yes, the ear candy animation is new, Nathan. I worked very hard on it. I'm very proud of it. Thank you very much. All right, now we are finally going to play Ryan Reset. The suspense is killing me.
Welcome to Elevate.
Oh, Ryan, your reset, your stuff is always so like such a nice world that I want to be in. I really, really love like the vibes that you have. Yeah, definitely needs a limiter on the master. Ryan is saying that they forgot to put the limiter on it, so I was giving it 8 dB of volume. So if you heard a little bump there, that was me. That was not Ryan. And I'm going to turn it back now just so I don't accidentally blow everyone's ears with the next one. See, usually I actually leave it where it is because OBS is at 0. And so for me to give it gain requires me to type something in, which often has disastrous results. But yeah, I mean, even with a limiter on it, I agree with what Alta Noah is saying, where it's a little bit empty and it's really hard to have that balance. Like this is something that's taken me a long time to learn, and I still have my moments of like having that clean space, but not having it be empty. And what I've concluded after making many tracks, collabing on many tracks, and picking apart and ripping my hair out over how do they do that, is that there's just so many little like ghost layers and noise layers and tiny little things sometimes that people put in that you can barely hear. And so it still sounds clean, but it's actually not completely silent. It's a little bit of an illusion. It's just put in the background enough that your ear isn't picking it out, right? So I think that, yeah, Nathan's saying maybe 8-bit plucks. I really like your chops. I think you're really good at little stuttery kind of chops. And I was hearing some chops at one point and I thought, you know what I might do? I might take that same chop layer that comes in the middle and high pass it like crazy so that it's almost like percussion, and then try putting it on in the background earlier, because I think that you had a really nice little like little glitchy rhythm. And if you just sort of like took a lot of the juice out of it and treated it like background sort of almost ghost notes, that could fill the space a little bit in certain parts. And you can also like sidechain that against other things and envelope it so that in key moments it doesn't take up space. Like you can have the kick and the snare still punch through, but it is a very tricky thing to have cleanliness but not emptiness. Alta Noah is suggesting offbeat plucks. Everybody's got a lot of ideas. Natty, what do you think?
Environmental Foley is what I think. If you're going to have an empty space and you want it to sound deliberate, add non-musical elements to the track so that then that they fill up the space without conflicting with the musical idea of that space. I mean, as the other thing I'm thinking of with this track, at least in its current state, is your second drop isn't exciting enough in comparison to the first one. The first one's kind of like you're introducing of your main chorusy theme, and that's really cool, but I feel like this track would really benefit from having the second drop be vastly more expansive and maybe more ambitious than the first. It would reward us for the journey, which is a recurring thing of mine. It's like, you know, where do you want to go and do you want to make it worthwhile getting there? I mean, I really always enjoy super happy but complex tracks like these. I mean, I think that the actual idea is wonderful. It's just a case of really looking at it and saying, I'm actually done writing it. You know, what is actually there to emphasize the story that I'm telling here?
As you often say, how do you make this a journey worth taking? Nathaniel is so much fun tonight. I hope you can be this fun. Even I know it's hard when you're home alone, but I like your dancing. I think you should do More of that. And Rags thinks it's a clone. Next up, we got Sherwood in the house. Sherwood has had a bit of a bummer of a day, so let's support them and just big ups for submitting, for hanging out with us. We love you, and we hope that you have a better day later on. And I have a feeling that I might be in this track because it has a title of one of the acapellas on my sample pack. So I'm already just going to say in advance, great vocal, great vocal.
Trembling, air feels like October sky. Fumbling, lost all track of space and time. And I know how things must seem so fragile in our shells. It is not so binary how we journey to ourselves. So how can I help watching the clouds pass through? No clue to time, no reason to be subdued. We hung in the skies for the first time. They draw the lines, there's rain in between. I'm chasing you. Pause myself, hold my breath before I die. A jellyfish beneath the surface, the sparks that make us thrive. I see the never-ending shoreline, but now I'm not alone. It's funny how sometimes we need to lose our way to find our home. So how can I help watching the clouds pass through? No clue to time, no reason to be subdued. We hung in the skies for the first time. They draw the lines, there's rain in between. I'm chasing you.
Great vocal. I'm just kidding. Seriously though, I mean, I've definitely those of you in my Discord, you know the gripes that I often have with the sample pack and people just slapping my name on it and all the crap that happens. But then I hear something super nice like this and it makes it all worth it. So thank you so much. I've talked to Sherwood a couple times, I think on social media before, and they've always been super respectful and really, like, this is honestly my own vocal aside is pretty dope. Like everything is clean, everything is punching, everything is, you know, like, I mean, it sits in a nice place. It's retro, but it's produced like in a modern way, and it's just really good. Like somebody called it Anderson Paak vibes. That is a huge compliment, my friends. I mean, I wish somebody would say that about my stuff. So I really sweetly, yes. Zine, come on, you're the human meme. I can meme just a little bit. Natty, it's not your vocal, so what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think your sample pack is actually really solid, and obviously, yeah, it's really annoying when people misuse it in that manner, but obviously, Sherwood, yeah, really well done. I actually liked how you converted the vocals into the old school, like, voice pad choir type thing. I mean, maybe Isha should make that a feature of a new pack. You know, because it actually suits your voice very well. And obviously this is a very old school R&B vibe kind of going on here, which makes well, it actually starts deviating from where my taste would normally sit, because I mean, I'm not a huge R&B person necessarily, and when I say, oh, maybe you should spice up the second chorus, but that's not really what people want in R&B. They want to come back to the really sexy, smooth bit again, and sort of, it's like a warm blanket, I think, this sort of track. So, I mean, in that context, you've done everything right. There's nothing really glaringly out of place. I mean, you've sort of sat everything within the stereo field, had everything so it's all varied where it needs to be, and yeah, good job. I mean, I can't think of anything useful to say here beyond that.
Well, 90s R&B is definitely my vibe, if you can't already tell by my artist name, which is literally from the 90s. So, yeah, I mean, I originally got my inspiration to be a producer from looking up all the artists that I was listening to, like Brandy and Aaliyah, and being like, what do they have in common? Oh, they were all produced by this guy called Timbaland. Okay, I actually want to be Timbaland. So that has been an inspiration for me. So great work, Sherwood. Again, like, love your stuff. Please come back and submit to us, and I hope that you have a better day soon. Next up, we have Nathan Van Der Berg. Unfinished, started yesterday, first progressive track. All right, awesome. Let's check it out.
Baby, make me nervous. You do that on purpose. Uneasy in your silence. Stillness feels like sirens. I could reach and touch you, but I'm afraid that I might love you. Neither one is silent, so I'll try to forget.
Oh my God. Zine, just stop. Go back to making car commercials. Nathan, keep making music. I think especially since you just started it yesterday, it's solid. I mean, I'm very jealous of people like you, because when I started something yesterday, it doesn't have this like pro listenable quality to it. So really, really good, like, initial vibe. I think that, you know, anything I could say would really just be like stuff you would get to when you get back to it. I think, as Chase says, I think the kick should be a little quieter and also more punchy. So that's a tricky thing, but I think once you make it more punchy, you can make it quieter because it will have more punch to it. Yeah, obviously, more outro and intro work, and yeah, I mean, like, solid first day.
I mean, you can't argue for more than that. I mean, Enderman saying I think it needed a bit more of an outro after the vocal ended, like 8 bars of a section to end it. But I mean, for this, I mean, how long was that file there, Isha?
How long?
Yeah.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. So I mean, like, if you're making a progressive track, obviously, you can't have a progressive track that's 2 minutes long. That's just not progressive enough.
He said he's gonna make it longer.
So I mean, obviously, you're going to make it longer, which makes sense. And I expect it's going to evolve in a substantial manner as you flesh it out. One of the things I think you could do is right now your kick sounds a little bit overblown, but you can make that intentional rather than having it for the entire track. Create a section of that track as you build up that tension that just sort of goes really hard into the kick. And then you can bring us back down and then build up again into it's like a different type of tensiony, massive sound wall kind of thing going on. The reason it doesn't work quite so much here is because it actually becomes very tiring to listen to. But it doesn't mean it's not good. I mean, it can be really satisfying to hear a crunchy kick with a lot of beefy low end. And, I mean, especially in a more techno context where, they're going to be cranking those speakers anyway. It can be really cool. Just don't do it for the entire track. And then it makes it more special when you do it.
You said doo-doo.
Doo-doo.
You said doo-doo.
I guess the heat really is frying our brains. We've lost about 40 IQ points. And what happened to the light?
Oh, the battery died, that one.
Oh well, R.I.P.
Sorry, you don't look.
F in chats.
F in chat. Sorry, yeah, I can't find the cable. We are just loose and unglued tonight, so I'm just going to keep going. We got a few more in the queue. The queue is closed for tonight just because we can only go till a certain amount before we die and our ears die. But let's move forward. We got Dennett Bleepy. Wow, I just blew my face off in the best way. I have to confess, as I get older, I spend a lot more time chilling, and music like this, especially when like living on a Spanish beach, eating paella and drinking wine, is out of context, but I cannot get the bass girl out of me. I'm definitely a bass head at heart, and I appreciate really good wubs. And the thing is like there is so much dubstep and rhythm and stuff that is so annoying and so repetitive and so unoriginal, but this has so much dynamic in like the pacing, the patterning, the stereo field. Like that was enjoyable. I really enjoyed that. It didn't bore me. It wasn't abrasive in an abrasive way. It was like the perfect amount of edginess. And like Chase said, it's dry, but it works because I think there's just so much detail that like it doesn't need reverb to create interesting space. So I know that this is me and my bass head perspective. I know that Nathaniel is not necessarily usually into this stuff, so I'm interested to see what you think.
Well, I mean, I've actually heard a fair bit of Dennett's stuff, and I mean, one thing he's very good at is putting his stamp on a genre. This one is another piece that definitely shows that. I mean, you definitely wouldn't mistake it for anything else with how hard and heavy and crazy it goes. For the really bassy people, I mean, for me, I'm like sometimes I'll listen to stuff like this. I mean, it depends what sort of mood I'm in. But like if you were to drop this in a club in just that right moment, people will go absolutely crazy. And I mean, this is also the loudest track we've had tonight. I actually had to turn my headphones a fair bit down just because, I mean, I don't particularly want to deafen myself today. But at the same time, while it's so clearly loudly mastered, it doesn't sound bad. Like it does. Usually one of the things you can do when you crank a master like this is reveal lots of annoying flaws in the mixdown. But it's clear, I think the mixdown is really well controlled. Like, even though you've got these crazy sounds, it's very well placed and everything sits where it's supposed to. And it's not annoying to listen to. And obviously, yeah, it's a clubby, bassy track. You're going to crank it if you can get away with it. So, good job.
A very, very good job. Next up, we have Files. I don't think I've seen that name before, so welcome to the feedback stream, and no specific feedback, but we will check it out anyways. Wait, my SoundCloud is being very strange. Again, well, SoundCloud, why are you like this? I would highly recommend, for those of you who have never tried Audius, try it. It's super clean. It doesn't compress the way that SoundCloud does, and it sounds great. But anyways, this is Go Wet by Files. Oh, wow. Some loud bangers in a row. So this is definitely another party track. Great overall sound. I agree with something Kurtabir said in the chat, which is like, there is something with the sub that is like not quite gelling with the track, and I can't really put my finger on it either. So definitely the chat has some good recommendations, but I think the saw, as others have said, could be modulated a little bit. I like to say it's like putting edges or corners on things. Like even if you do something simple, like a really subtle filter just quickly on the attack or on the release, like, and just shape the sound a bit. That's kind of why FM synthesis, I think, is so detailed and realistic, because you do these crazy series of envelopes over all these little operators, and they're modulating each other and doing tiny things, and it's like just that tiny movement gives you such a dynamic, deep sound. So I would also suggest modulating the saw and like just playing with it. Is like a little bit sausagey and intense, so I think definitely some minimal sections, like just deep. I'm always a big fan of these like minimal rollout sections, is what we used to call them in drum and bass. Like there would be like the intense drop and everything is going, and then there'd be the rollout. There would be like the deep section where you just get to focus on the percussion and the sub. And I think that, you know, this would give people some breathing room from the saw, and it's like playing hard to get. Like you have to take it away so that they want it back.
Overall, really fun vibe. Very much enjoyed that sort of. I mean, it's hard to describe what type of track it is, because I mean it's sort of almost trancey in places, but it's very distorted and angry, and that's quite not something I have listened to a great deal. There's probably a good name for this, but my brain isn't working right now, so no idea. I think that the other nitpick I can think of is that the piano in the intro was ever so slightly piercing. I definitely take a look at how that's sitting in your stereo, like frequency spectrum. Maybe stick something like a dynamic EQ just to sort of tame those peaks a little bit, or maybe I don't know, something like a transient shaper. You could take the edge off ever so slightly, perhaps, because it is mainly in the initial hit of those really high notes that it just sort of gets me. I really liked your call and response. That was something that, I mean, like immediately you sort of say, okay, we're doing this, now we're responding with this, and it's back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. You're miming, it's great. I mean, yeah, you're really at that 98%. I'm just doing little nips and tucks to make sure everything is sitting nicely. I mean, I think one of the things that makes the sub maybe not gel quite so well is it might not be 100% in key with everything else. I mean, I'd maybe run it through something like Melodyne. You know, pitch correction software isn't just for vocals. You can chuck it on anything. And I actually find it really useful, especially when I'm heavily post-processing a sound. Because sometimes these extra little harmonics get in that you don't actually want and kind of take the sound away from the note that you're actually intended to hit. So, I mean, when I've been experimenting with bass sound design in the last year, I mean, there's a lot of songs in my whip archive that nobody's ever heard. I've actually been just testing to see, okay, what if I tie this up a little bit with some pitch correction? And it can actually make it way easier to stack sounds and layer them up, because there's less sub-harmonic conflict between them.
Interesting take. This is why we're Feedback and Friends. There's so many great people in the chat. Thank you so much, Schwartz AZ, for gifting those subs. This is all very new to me. We just got the sub thing set up, but we're going to make some wicked emojis and some other benefits. And thank you. All of this goes back into supporting our shows, our workshops. We really love you and appreciate you. Next up, we have Blake, aka Mark Hives. And they say, I've only been dipping my feet in EDM dubstep for some months, although I have some years experience of making hip hop. And I'm sending this one in before I've gone into the vocals or mix. So I'd love some feedback on the mix mostly. Also, the vocals and speech in there is a placeholder. I like to do stupid stuff before I get into actual vocals. I remember Blake saying they couldn't stay. So maybe I should move them to the end for somebody who's here.
I mean, then we can tell them it was at the end.
Yeah, okay. Never mind. Sorry, I just read that monologue for no reason. Teaser. Now we're all excited to hear Blake. Oh no, Blake is here. All right, okay. Sweet. I thought you were in bed. All right, so back to that. Blake, thank you for saying what's up. Here you go.
I look around, I see these young faces, and I think, I mean, I made every wrong choice a middle-aged man can make. I pissed away all my money, believe it or not. I chased off anyone who's ever loved me. And lately, I can't even stand the face I see in the mirror. You know, when you get old in life, things get taken from you. You mean, that's part of life. But you only learn that when you start losing stuff. You find out.
Good. So, interesting choice of sample in the intro there. People are saying it's Al Pacino. I mean, I wouldn't know off the top of my head, so I mean, I'm going to assume they're correct. Rags said here, I want to vibe, not be lectured at. I mean, that is the risk you take when you use effectively a quotation as your song intro. And I think your song is strong enough without it. I mean, these superstar stacks are actually really, really good. And, yeah, like, that's the hook of the track. I don't think you need anything extra selling pointy meme kind of thing going on there. I mean, maybe just find a way to sort of hint at what you're cooking up in the chorus there in your intro instead, and just sort of speedrun it a little bit. People are also suggesting the breakdown might be a little bit long, and I also think that your breakdown is actually the place to move that slight tempo change that you introduce right after it. I mean, when you sort of try and do it with the drums, when we've sort of mellowed out a bit, it's almost like you've missed the transition point and are just sort of catching up on yourself. So maybe just shunt that function further forward and let your build back up be more natural and straight, because I think that you missed a trick there. I think this is also one of those songs where it's okay to repeat the drop, because it is just so wall of soundy, and you've left just the right amount of space otherwise that it's okay repeating yourself, because it's kind of that is the point of this song, that really, really aggressive superstar stack, and it's very satisfying to listen to. So I mean, overall, I mean, I was vibing. I really do enjoy tracks like this that make me want to sort of feel like I'm kite surfing or something.
I am agreeing with people in the chat that the synth is a little bit too loud, and it is kind of like almost drowning out the percussion. So, you know, there's no rule per se, but I mean, EDM, like in particular, or like any electronic music, usually kind of has the drums very far forward in the mix compared to stuff like pop. But I mean, you say that you've made hip hop and stuff. It's pretty similar to that. I think the lead is just a little bit like could be pulled back a bit, and because it's very strong, right? And personally, like this could be, this is subjective by definition because it's my opinion, but I don't think you really need those like dubstep wobbles. I feel like you have such strong melody and stuff that you could have just kind of an undulating, maybe like portamento sub, and really emphasize that like that wave of synths washing over you with the bass kind of just pulsing and pushing and pulling, like, because it's a little bit distracting. I feel like it's sort of pulling my attention away, and to be blunt, it's not like the most, like, we were listening to like Dennett before, and I think that it was a more sophisticated series of wobbles, whereas this is sort of like an afterthought compared to like the other cool synths that you have. So I feel like maybe you're sort of going, okay, I'm playing with dubstep, and that's totally cool. Try everything, right? But I'm just IMO. I am HO, because I am extremely humble. I'm the humblest of the humble people. I am the most humble person that ever existed on the planet. I think that you didn't need that. So just again, like, you don't take it with a grain of salt, but that's just where I'm at, because I think that it is a little bit dated and it takes away from the magic of the rest of your song. However, I did enjoy it, and I think that if you pull that synth back under control, that will definitely make the song like pop more, for sure. Next up, we got Alto Noah, who has been giving super great feedback. We love having you here. I'm so happy to have you and everything. And we have a work in progress. They say, I would like to know if the current elements of the song sound good and if the mixing is decent enough. Okay, so let's do it. Um, I think I like lost my intestines somewhere. I'm not sure if they are ever coming back. Whew. I'm definitely like out of my depth on this. Even though I like loud, noisy music, I feel like compared to this, I don't, and I'm a very uptight person. But from what I could hear, definitely I agree with Chase that the kick was a little bit intense. But for such a crazy style, your elements were really, really clear. Like the breaks were really thick. I think just pulling the kick back a little bit would help. It was super loud, so I think you definitely over smashed the limiter. I actually had to turn the master down, and that was like one of the first times tonight. So I think, it is a loud genre, but just the kick alone is probably like taking a lot of that headroom. So I think the kicks in general, yeah, just throughout the whole thing, I was being like stabbed with the kick, and there is a balance, right? It is good to have that punch out in the mix, but it was so extreme that I felt like I was losing some of the other like crazy work that you were doing, because you had a lot of really cool like synths and other elements going on. Do you listen to hardstyle-ish stuff? I'm sorry, they said that this was not hardstyle. I have no idea what genre it is then.
I mean, well, but there's a bit of a conflict between the hardcore producers and the hardstyle producers, and the breakcore producers and everyone else. They all kind of make stuff that's in a similar area to each other, but they also all kind of hate each other as people, and they like, no, that my sound is better, thanks. So I mean, I don't think you're ever going to find one label here that sort of like really perfectly matches everybody's expectations of it. So yeah, they're saying it's hardcore mixed with D&B breaks. So at least I was on the right track here with hardcore. I think that there's some tweaks you can make to the arrangement with this, because I mean, while I don't necessarily listen to a huge amount of this music, I have heard a fair number of tracks like this, with this sort of, especially with the hardcore kick and mixing in breaks occasionally. And it's like the whole track is going fast, but it doesn't mean your arrangement has to go fast. And there's a couple of moments where it would really benefit from sort of just breathing a little bit before you slam everything back down. I mean, that transition point between the breaks back into the hardcore kicks, I felt was just a little bit too on grid and rough. It would have been nice to sort of, rather than sticking to the 4/8 division, maybe go down to like 2 bars, give it a little bit more room to sort of do its thing, and then chuck us back into the hardcore. It's that sort of where you've got all the sections that you want it to have, but I mean, even with this sort of very club ready kind of thing, it's okay to have a couple moments that aren't in that 4/8/16 grid. You can get away with it, especially if the overarching structure is still solid. It just becomes a sort of transition point moment of interest that benefits the flow of the track. And I think that's what you need to focus on here, not the sound design mostly. I think a lot of that is fine for the genre. And you clearly know how to master break production, because those sounded really good. It's just allowing yourself to sort of let the idea express itself and breathe.
Yes. Agreed. Yeah, but honestly, like sound design and originality wise, that was really like enjoyable, even though that was really intense. I didn't feel like there were like weak sounds in there. Like I felt like everything was really strong and intense. And yeah, I mean, you don't have to make music for clubs, but generally things with beats, I mean, you want people to kind of move to it in a certain way. So you don't have to always aim it for the club, but just just think about like what your focus is with it. I'm trying to figure out if I can play this next track from Cafe Medbula. It looks released to me, and the problem with that is that if we play something that's released, you have to, like, people don't know this a lot of time. They go, oh, I just put this out myself, it's fine. The thing is that you have to select certain types of rights when you are releasing something, even when you're doing it yourself, because otherwise they do this lovely automatic strike thing, which is really irritating. And it happens to me on my own stuff. Like I used to start out this show with my own music and I would just get strikes because your song contains, your stream contains elements of blah, blah, blah by Alicia. So unless you've actually explicitly set it out with your distributor, they're going to like automatically strike us. And if we get a bunch of strikes, we could be kicked offline. So I'm going to just like think about that and maybe we can research it because I don't want to skip you. I mean, we love having you here and everything, but let's move on from that for now. And then Nathan has a second submission. Again, we have to push that. So we are actually almost through the queue. We got Salvati up next. Super stoked always to hear Salvati, who is a great contributor. Looking for feedback on mix for the most part, though I know the kick is kind of weak in this song. In the second chorus, it switches over to remix of World's instruments. Hope you like. Okay, that's cool. Salvati, everyone.
I don't have the words left to say. I'm watching those thoughts go away. So give me some time, give me space. 'Cause I won't be there in his place. And everything's fine till I think all those thoughts and your past starts to bleed, but it's not what I need. And your past starts to hang, but it's best if I'm not again. So I scratch all my notes and start over again. There's no easy way out, no foreseeable end. Can't say a word when I talk to my friends, and I feel like a burden all over again. I'm stopping myself from being myself on the web. And I'm stopping myself from stopping myself at the dead. And I'm being myself, but it's just not enough, you said. Your mixes are trash, but your melody's stuck in my head. And I know you're afraid that I won't take the lead. That one man's soul is another one's sleep. I can't see the ground that's right beneath my feet. So carry me, so carry me. And the sky goes gray and my thoughts are dead. And nothing's enough to get out of bed. For I know I'm afraid, but nothing can save me now. So carry me down. You said you were done yesterday. You knew that the world doesn't change. I'm not gonna risk you away. 'Cause I know that all stay the same. And I'm stopping myself from being myself on the web. And I'm stopping myself from being myself yet again. And I'm being myself, but it's just not enough, you said. Yeah, your mixes are trash, but your melody's stuck in my head. I know I'm afraid, my heart and my brain. Your second-hand trauma, my only escape. I can't seem to pin down a reason to be. So carry me, oh carry me. And you're bringing it up, I don't know what to say. That if we just met, it might be another way. But you know I'm afraid, but nothing can save me now. So carry me, let's
Wow, that was like, as always, Salvati. I'm gonna let Natty comment more on this because I know that this is like kind of more up his alley and expertise. But I like your ideas. I think you have a ton of ideas. I also think that you are at a stage, maybe, which we all go through, where you have so many ideas that you're trying to fit into one song. And sometimes the risk of that, when it's so complex and like goes in so many places, is you can kind of lose focus on the original idea. And there's so much going on so much of the time. I think those beautiful moments are when it dips into just being your voice and some really cool focus on it. So I would say, especially at the beginning, when there was the build up going on, I felt like I had too many places for my ears to go, and I really just wanted to focus more on your voice. And this is so tricky. It's really tricky to mix vocals and have a busy track. So I think sometimes you just have to make some choices. You can do some creative stuff with like mid-side EQing and stuff like that, but I would almost like, if you have this urge, like what we all do, to do so many things, you can always do multiple mixes of things, and this is also a really great way to promote singles when you're self-releasing, is to just have like the weird extended edit, the radio edit, the dance remix, like
Slowed and reverb apparently is a thing people like doing.
slowed and reverb. Oh my God, I hate that because, I gotta say that a friend of mine that said it's the white people co-opting chopped and screwed. It was called chopped and screwed way before it was called slow and reverb. So don't at me with that, Natty. I would honestly, I would just kind of focus and clarify. Thank you. I'm glad you were still there to appreciate that. I would just kind of clarify your ideas down a little bit more, because I think you have a really compelling voice and you have like this really cool indie sound and some good songwriting skills. But yeah, I love your crazy edits. And at the same time, there's so many of them that I feel like it could be more than one song or one edit. What do you think?
I mean, Salvati's definitely never short of ideas, and I like his synth pop aesthetic. It's very maximalist. I mean, for me, there were a couple moments where, in the production side, I felt like the mix was actually slanted slightly. I mean, I don't know what it was like on you, but I felt like I was ever so slightly leaning towards my left side. Like, it was really, really subtle. Like, but I mean, it just feels like maybe take a look at it in a stereoscope, like, actually see the stereo field visually, and start turning elements on one by one gradually, because I feel like something's just ever so slightly imbalanced between your left and your right side, which isn't helping with the fact that your track is so damn busy that it can sometimes be hard to focus on one element. And if it's imbalanced, then it just sort of makes us lose that center even more. And especially towards the end, I felt like my ear was just doing this ever so slightly. So be careful there. And I mean, that's sort of one of those last minute sort of checks to make sure everything really is sitting where you want it to be in the stereo field. The other thing was in places your sub bass was ever slightly too boomy.
Oh yeah, I forgot to say that. It was huge.
Yeah. So again, I mean, this is maybe a thing. I don't know what you're listening on. It might not be able to recreate those frequencies to the degree of accuracy that you need them to. So you've got to do it visually. Something like span, or even just looking in your EQ to see how it responds, and just nail that down a little bit more. I definitely agree with maybe exploring different edits. I mean, obviously you've got this version. You don't have to lose this version to work on other versions. You got save files, just riff on it. So maybe explore the overall variety of ideas and see which one is really the strongest one. Because maybe that'll be the thing that you emphasize over everything else. And you then start bringing everything else back in gradually as sort of like really subtle ear candy type things. Here we go.
Another just suggestion for people like Salvati who have too many ideas. I think that like one of the things that you can do to like let them go, I have friends who do this. You can export MIDI and audio clips and catalog them by like tempo and key. I have friends who do this, and you can create yourself a little idea bank, because everyone, probably even you, maybe once in a while, has moments where like you're like, I want to do something, but I'm a little stuck. And at that point, you can actually like play Mad Libs with your ideas. You can play games and hang out and get some new inspiration from yourself. By the way, I was holding my hand over your computer, Natty, because I was like, where is this intense heat coming from? And it is coming from your laptop. I was wondering why, like, I'm starting to burn up. I think we should turn the AC on real quick. Next up, we have Chase Dobson. Chase is a freaking legend. I love having you here, Chase. I miss hanging out with you. I'm coming back to Denver. Maybe we will, by chance, be there at the same time. Chase is touring a lot. I'm really interested. And Chase's question is this relevant in 2022? I mean, look, I'm going to tell you before I even listen, I've seen people wearing bell bottoms again. So if people can wear bell bottoms in 22, I think you can do pretty much anything. I was really hoping those would never come back. I can bet that I'm going to like your track more than I like bell bottoms. I really hate bell bottoms. So do they have a bell bottom rage happening at Primark? I just wanted them to, I just want them to be like deleted off the face of the earth. No bell bottoms. Bell bottoms are bad. And Chase is good. Before you even told me that you made this in a hotel with a Prophet 6, I was going to say, I really love that feeling when somebody is just using lots of analog synth all together. Like, it's not fair, right? Like, they just naturally have that delicious imperfection and fluctuation that makes sounds really thick with two C's. So, I mean, I love it. And like, talking about relevant, have y'all noticed that like Kate Bush is the top of the Billboard charts with a really old song because it was in Stranger Things, which I thought of when people started talking about it. I mean, on the depressing part, it shows that people are sheeple and they will take the power of suggestion. And on the positive part, it's kind of like anything is relevant if you can make it so. So, I mean, I totally think that, especially with the renewed interest in 80s sounds and analog sounds, this is super relevant and super current, and, you know, could get snatched up by movie directors everywhere because it's really epic without being too busy. So it sounds super, super dope, super clean. I love it.
I mean, I think one of the things that tracks like these are also really good for. I mean, obviously it's using a Prophet 6, and that's very cool. But it's like, obviously Chase here is like taking the songwriting on his own terms. He's not trying to ape some old 80s thing. It's not like a really specific period of 80s either. I mean, you look at synthwave sometimes, it's like they have this distorted, idealistic view of what the 80s was like when it was actually quite varied. And so merging in with the sort of chill steppy beats already elevates it into its own category of being, yes, it's kind of retro, but it's its own thing, and it knows where it is sitting in relation to sort of the trip hoppy, loosey, break, like down tempo beats kind of thing. So that's really cool. So far, I don't really have any major issues with the production values. I think it does what it achieves to be. Maybe in arrangement terms, there were a couple points where it might have been a little bit too low energy that could have maybe done with maybe a little bit of a couple of swells, and you know, because you've got that wonderful analog synth that it can make such like simultaneously smooth and gritty sounds, and that's kind of cool. But I mean, aside from that, moments where it could have just been a little bit spicier, I think it's a solid track.
Very spicy, very solid. I encourage you to look up Chase, because Chase is a G. Chase is a legend. Super, super happy always to have Chase contributing. Makes really great music. You should check the rest of it out. We got time for a couple more. We have somebody named Frequency Response, who I have not seen before, so welcome. And they are looking for feedback on mixing.
Welcome to Sony Acid Pro 5. Our latest innovative technologies will take your production to the next level. Subscribe to our latest package and receive our premium sound CD with over 50 loops. Aside from being a bit rigid, I mean, I really like what you're trying to do here. I mean, you say you were wanting questions about the mix. I mean, until the bass came in, I felt like it was a bit hollow, but then once you hit it, it actually sounds very intentional. Mainly, I think the things here, and it's really just arrangement stuff that you have to work on. Just breaking everything up a little bit, putting things a little bit forward and back, as someone suggested, with a bit of swing. You know, it turns it from a raw sort of basic techno track into something with a bit of swagger and groove. I think the groove is the big thing you need to add here, because that's what will get people actually dancing to your track. So, and thank you, Rags, for making me break during that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, I think your general mix is pretty slamming. The kick, if I were being nitpicky, the kick had a little bit of, I think, muddiness that could have been notched out, just tiny bits. And I like High Cheese's comment. It wants to be psytrance with no delay. Yeah, I mean, maybe some delay would give it some dimension, because I think right now, I mean, people are clowning. It's all jokes. We love you, you know, and it's a quality. It's got some quality to it. But I think the thing that's missing is a little bit of, dimension and swagger. So delay can definitely accomplish that. That's probably why people use so much delay in psytrance, is just to give a little bit of depth and contrast and dimension, right? I say probably because I've never made psytrance in my life, although I may or may not have been working on a melodic house collab that is actually going to get signed to a fairly big label in that genre, and I have to think of a new alias because all my old fans will make fun of me, but it might be bigger than a lot of other stuff I've done. Anyways, I digress. I think I agree with groove and swing, and just adding a little bit more fun to it. You know, I almost feel like you're not having enough fun. Like, it seems like you were at your computer and you were super serious and you're like, okay, I put this element here, I put this element here, but like, let loose a little bit, like enjoy yourself, like cut on the dance floor, like go, just shake it up a little bit, because your basic mix is good, but now you just need some flair and some evolution. So not bad things to work on, and hopefully, you know, we hope to see you again, and feel free to keep submitting to us. And Enderman says, in repetitive genres like psytrance, delay injects rhythmic and textural depth to keep things from getting bland. Exactamente, my friend. Wonderful. Okay, so we have time. We're gonna sneak in Jay Lotto here. Thanks for staying locked. Thanks for being a good friend. You're all really good friends. We love your feedback, and I just wanted to put it out there, like, anybody who is in here, like, we would love to have you as a friend, as a guest on stream. You really don't need much. You just basically need, you can even do it from a phone if you have the right connections, you know, because I can send you a stereo audio as long as you have a browser and you can log in. And Nathaniel is going to have to hold it up without me a couple times because I have a bunch of stuff going on. My mom is coming to visit, and I have to go pick her up in Madrid in a couple weeks, so we're going to need a guest then. And then I'm actually going to fly back to the States for a little while, so there may be a couple days I'm in transit. I may do an American edition that's on a time zone that's better, because I know that a lot of people are tuning in from work or class, and I super appreciate that. I know it's tough, but I would love to have Rags, for instance, coming on the stream, and I know that he's at work. Yes, I do have parents. They're really intense. They're both psychologists. So I'm sure that after a couple weeks, I will also be feeling a little intense. Maybe I'll get my mom to give feedback. No joke, though. My mom is coming to Bristol to help with the show, so watch out. We are going to stay on task. All right, so last track of the night is Jay Lotto. I'm not sure if you want any more specific feedback or just general, but I'm just going to play your track, and we are going to go for it. All right. Some nice, hopeful, uplifting stuff to close out the night from Jay Lotto. Thank you. I'm in a super good mood. I was in a good mood anyways, but really nice chords. Really pretty whip. I think, you're still in the whip stage, so I would really finesse more automation and modulation in general, because as Grades is saying, it needs more variation, like changing up the synth, a bunch of fills, a little ear candy here and there to break up the chords. There's a lot of like little tips and tricks and tiny little things that you can do. I do agree with Endiment that the kick is a little bit short. I almost never say that because usually people's kicks are too long, but in this case it's very like tight and punchy and maybe needs to roll a little bit, because envelopes are kind of like the most underrated thing. I think people are always like fussing with compression and EQs and fancy plugins, and sometimes it's as simple as an envelope. I really love transient shapers for this reason. Kilohertz actually has a really nice one, and recently we didn't do plugin of the week, but I would just say instead of just plugin in the week, one quick shouts out to Kilohertz, because recently they made a whole bunch of their plugins free. So I would highly recommend getting the free ones and using the transient shaper to play around with sounds to test things, because it's so simple. And Kilohertz, like, their stuff is not always the most flashy looking, but it performs really well. It has really low latency and phase shifting and all these sort of things that mess things up. They are very low on because their stuff just works really well. So I would say just play around with variation. Your drums in general are a little bit sort of dry and empty compared to the big chords. So I would play around with some reverbs. I would definitely try changing out the kick, and maybe just, filling in with hi-hats was another great suggestion from Endiment. And Endiment, you're on fire today. You can also lengthen your kick tail by using a compressor with a really slow release followed by an expander with a much faster release. Look at you, fancy.
Endiment is definitely a fancy fellow. Okay, I really enjoyed what you were doing here with the vibe. I mean, when you're finishing up, I definitely, there's always reference mixing. Sometimes it's also a case of sticking it on a different device you own and seeing how it sounds. Right now, your high end is a little bit shrill, and one good way I use to sometimes still check that kind of thing is to stick it on my phone speakers, because they have a hard time processing low bass notes, but they also have a hard time not distorting really high end. And if you get your high end right, it'll still sound okay. So that'd be something as you get further along that I double check, because right now I had to turn my headphones down because it was just a little bit much. The other thing is basically if you're going to have sort of call and response, make sure that you're not always using the same response. Because that's what establishes the conversation. Like, if you were talking with your friends, you're not going to just repeat the same response unless you're really not paying attention to them. Like, if I asked Tisha how she was and she just goes, every time to whatever we're saying, that's not really a conversation. Just have fun with it. That's the most important thing, just explore things, test things, even if you think you found the perfect solution, try a few more. Just save a few forks of your file. Keep going, and maybe you'll be proven right. There's a story from my, when I was studying architecture. Apparently, there's an architect, I can't remember which one, where it might have been like Richard Murphy or something.
Great story, Maddie.
Sorry, I know. Anyway, where he goes into a client and he will present them all the wrong solutions first, and say, okay, here's why my solution that I've come up with now is the correct one. So he'll literally develop, if he thinks he's come up with the perfect solution, he'll make sure he's narrowed down all the really bad ones first. Because then he's absolutely sure the one he has is the perfect one.
It's true.
So, that it's a bit of left field comparison here, but I think it can be fun with music to do, just for the sake of it.
Amazing. And it's not necessarily left field, because I truly believe architecture to be just as much of an art as music. I mean, if you've been to Barcelona and you've seen a Gaudi building, or even here in Valencia, the Calatrava stuff, that is definitely art. Wow, we had such a great chat tonight, and I really enjoyed dancing next to Nathaniel in person. And thank you for visiting me. We all love you so much. And I just want to give special shouts out to everyone who is subscribed. This is so wild. I promise we are going to work on some really great emojis and some other benefits. And of course, this may grant you queue skipping privileges in a certain capacity. But shouts out to Grades, Endiment, Schwartz AZ, mega shouts out for giving out 5 subs. Volksend, High Cheeses, Baco Bibizo, Zine, Altanoa. Wow, thank you. My mind is blown. We love you. And I'm going to let Natty have the last word before we sign off.
Live from Saturday night. I can't do that one without being stupid. Anyway, love you all, guys. Looking forward to seeing you when we go in Bristol, because we are going to be live streaming that. And if you want to join me on Feedback and Friends in a couple of weeks, hit me up on Twitter or Discord. I'd love to have at least 1 or 2 of you there with me. Thank you.
And good
Night.